Morning, everybody. Welcome to Google Wave Federation Day. So my name is Dan Peterson. I'm a product manager on Google Wave. I focus primarily on the Federation protocol and the API platform. So thank you all for coming. It's great to see you here. So the goal for today is really we're going to be federating this blue logo all over the web. And by that, I really mean that this is a kickoff event for what we're doing around the Federation protocol for Wave. And the idea is to get lots of providers implementing Wave. And we hope that we can build a community of contributors that are getting involved here. So by the time you leave today, I hope you'll have a better understanding of how Wave works and how you can get involved. So let's do a quick walkthrough of the agenda. So I'll start off giving an introduction to what we're up to with Federation, and then Soren Lassen will come up and speak to some of the architecture of Google Wave and go deeper into the technical concepts. After that, we'll have a quick break for lunch and do some more Q&A over lunch. And then we'll break out into more discussion type sections in the afternoon. And you'll notice there's a slight schedule change here. We have a demo that will be happening a little bit later in the afternoon. We're doing some polish, you might say. So the demo is for 3 o'clock. And a couple other logistical notes. So Wave Sandbox accounts. Everybody in this room, as part of registering for this event, should have already received an invite for the Wave Sandbox account. If you haven't, first, double check your spam folder, sometimes. And then otherwise, reach out to Alan. Alan, if you want to raise your hand real quick or stand up. Alan in the back is a good guy. He'll take care of you and get you an account. Also, we have a URL. Oh, I need to refresh this presentation. tr.im/fed721. We're making a group inside Wave Sandbox, so everybody in this room can collaborate and talk about what's going on in Wave and sort of get started that way. The other logistical note is that there are already about 6,000 developers who do have access to Wave Sandbox, and we're working through another 20,000 accounts over the next month or so. So it's good to see that interest and mostly people working to use the APIs. Let me see what's going on here. Doesn't like what I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to get it. So tr.im/fed FED721, and that's the group we'll create. Yeah, I'm trying to present it. It's right there. There we go. Sorry about that, folks. So, right, now that all the pesky logistics and technical quirks are out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So Google Wave is a new communication and collaboration tool. At the very core of it, it introduces a new Wave model. If we take a step back, Wave itself it's different than what you might know from typical email type communication. So email itself is very, very successful as a communication platform on the web. And that's pretty remarkable when you realize that email's protocol was written more than 40 years ago, before people had the benefit of the net, before they had the benefit of SMS and social networks and BBS and wikis and all these different types of things that we take for granted today. So what we did with Wave is we took a step back to answer the question of what would email look like if it were invented today. So let me walk you through how email and Wave differ at the very core. So this here is a diagram of email, basically. So you have an email, and you add recipients to it, and then copies are sent all over the web. But those are just static copies that are basically snapshots. In the Wave world, it's actually a hosted conversation or a hosted document. So there is one shared object that all users collaborate on. And when you do that, a lot of interesting things sort of fall out of it, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. But the basic idea is that it's a very lightweight tree structure to the message. And this is only the beginning. So this is the basic concept behind the Wave Federation protocol. The idea is that there should be lots of different providers of Wave, and Google is clearly not the central server involved. The intention here is for Google to just be one of many providers, and to put it another way, the vision for Wave is incomplete without non-Google Wave providers. So the rough game plan here, we have basically to learn from the web. The web is grown through open APIs and standard protocols, and so we hope that others will be able to adopt Wave in a similar way and contribute to it. So you notice that email was very successful since SMTP was a distributed system, and lots of people could go ahead and turn on their own server. So this is sort of a mimic to that in some regards. It's also important for sensitive data that you often do in things like email that both users and enterprises can manage their own data and traffic. And that's also core to what is going on in the Federation Protocol. So we started everything around Google Wave as a developer preview, and that's a little bit different for Google. The reason we did that is that the vision here is rather large, and so we need to get more people involved, and there's a lot of different ways to contribute, especially as developers, and it seemed like a good way to start for something that is so different and so large in scope. And also, as I'm sure will be apparent as you get more and more into the Wave sandbox, there are bugs. There's lots of bugs, so things are early here. Always keep that in mind. So today, as part of the Google Wave Federation Day, we're happy to be open sourcing about 20,000 lines of code. I call these baby steps. It's Java code, it's Apache 2.0 licensed, and it'll come in 2 drops. One just went a few minutes ago, the Wave model and operational transform. And it's at the same place as where the subversion, or sorry, the mercurial for the protocol is already at. And then the second drop, which we'll be demoing later today, is the idea, is a basic prototype client server that uses that. So let's go a little bit deeper on each of those. So operational transform is really the heart and soul of Google Wave's collaboration model. It manages the concurrency control when you have many different collaborators or participants on a Wave. The idea is that if you have many Wave servers, if they don't all have the same operational transform algorithm, bad things will happen. It really is important, if you want the system to work, that everybody has the same algorithm for fairly obvious reasons. So let's see. The Wave model itself, well, so the operational transform that we shipped today is an iteration beyond what we shipped back in May. It's actually such an iteration that we haven't yet implemented it ourselves on our production systems. So that's something we'll be working on next. In addition to that, the Wave model directories sort of lay out the data model of how operational transform works. And those are code that we hope will eventually evolve into the reference implementation. So Fed1 is sort of our cutesy name for the basic prototype client server. It's really intended to be an executable spec for the wire protocol. And while we're happy to take patches and contributions of that regards that are bug fixes, we don't really see this as being the beginning of the reference implementation. This is more meant to be a hello world as a simple implementation to really encourage prototyping and experimentation, because again, things are early. So at the broader picture, there's really 4 steps going on in here. We're basically in the middle of going from number 2 to number 3. So back at Google I/O, we published a very early draft of the Federation Protocol, and we've been iterating on it in a public repo since then. And we also went ahead and did a very liberal patent license on the IP related to that protocol. And we're serious about that. And we're also watching the Open Web Foundation to see, as the legal work matures there, to see what we can do to sort of align with that. In addition to that, for good measure, we went ahead and Creative Commons licensed all of the white papers on waveprotocol.org, as well as the protocol spec itself, as well as the Google Wave API documentation. So really that's just so you can remix and reuse the documentation as you need in your own work. So So number 2 is really what we're doing here today, and we can talk more about that. And then number 3 is where we're headed next. We'll work to open up our own system using the new operations that are defined in the operational transform we just open sourced, as well as get those ports opened on wavesandbox.com and wave.google.com. And the hope is that we can do number 3 by the September 30th date we talked about yesterday, but it's a stretch goal, so we'll see how we do. So later on in step 4, we will be open sourcing the lion's share of Google's server and Google's client that goes into Google Wave, but that will take some time. The whole team right now is working on speed, stability, and usability of Google Wave, and that's really in preparation for the September 30th extended preview, where real live users, not just developers, will get access in the range of 100,000. So there's some work to be done there. And there's also some work to be done to actually disentangle the internal Google production systems from the code we're going to open source. So both those two things mean that it'll take a while. But really the bottom line here is that we'd like to work with you. So we're definitely very early in everything going on with Google Wave, especially around the Federation protocol. But there's a bright future ahead, I'd say. So next up, I'd like to actually invite Soren Lassen up, who's the backend architect of Google Wave. So Soren worked on Google Web Search infrastructure for several years in Mountain View before he joined the Wave team down in Sydney. And he developed WAN acceleration products and erasure codes for internet content distribution.